My name is Giselle, and at 32 years old, I thought I had finally created my perfect sanctuary. The lake house I purchased after 8 years of saving was my pride and joy. Then one day my phone rang. It was my sister Amanda, her voice shaking, as she revealed our parents had sold my beloved lake house to fund her extravagant wedding. My entire world collapsed in that moment. I still cannot believe what my parents did. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from in the comments and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you will want to see how I handled this betrayal. Growing up in suburban Chicago, I always knew I was different from the rest of my family. At 32, I had established myself as a successful architect designing modern structures that blended seamlessly with their environments. My parents, James and Diana Wilson, both 58 and 56 respectively, had always been proud of my accomplishments, or so I thought. My younger sister Amanda, 26, had always been the golden child, the one who received the lion's share of attention, affection, and resources. Despite the favoritism, I loved my family deeply. We were not perfect, but we were bound by the threads of shared memories and experiences that form the tapestry of family life. Sunday dinners, holiday gatherings, and summer vacations filled the album of my childhood memories. And among these memories, none shone brighter than those formed at Lake Geneva, where we spent countless summers during my formative years. The crystal blue waters of the lake, the symphony of cicadas at dusk, the scent of pine trees mingling with barbecue smoke, these sensory memories were etched into my soul. As a child, I would sit on the dock dangling my feet in the cool water, dreaming of someday owning my own slice of this paradise. While other kids fantasized about becoming astronauts or movie stars, my dream was simpler, but no less ambitious, to have my own lake house, a sanctuary where I could escape the concrete and glass of my urban professional life. After college, I threw myself into my career with singular focus. Architecture was not just my profession, but my passion. I worked 60-hour weeks, took on extra freelance projects, and lived in a modest apartment to maximize my savings. Every dollar I saved brought me closer to my dream. 8 years of sacrifice and dedication finally bore fruit when I found a charming, if somewhat neglected cabin on a quiet cove of Lake Geneva. At $220,000, it stretched my budget to the absolute limit, but when I stood on that weathered deck and looked out over the water, I knew this was home. The renovation process was both exhausting and exhilarating. I spent every weekend and vacation day at the lake house, ripping out dated carpeting, refinishing hardwood floors, and painting walls in soothing shades of blue and green that reflected the natural beauty outside. I installed new windows to maximize the lake view, refurbished the stone fireplace, and built custom bookshelves to house my collection of architectural books and novels. Each nail I hammered, each brushstroke I applied was an act of love. This was not just a financial investment, it was an emotional one. The lake house represented more than just property ownership. It symbolized my independence, my success, my ability to create beauty from neglect. It was tangible proof that hard work and perseverance could transform dreams into reality. When the renovation was complete, I hosted a small gathering for close friends and family. My parents seemed genuinely happy for me, though they made several comments about how I should be focusing on finding a husband rather than becoming a property owner. Amanda appeared bored and spent most of the evening on her phone. Still, it was a perfect day, and as the sun set over the lake, casting golden reflections across the water, I made a silent promise to myself. This sanctuary would be my refuge, my joy, my reward for years of dedication. In the months that followed, I established a routine. Weekdays were for the city and my career, but weekends belonged to the lake. I would arrive late Friday night, often exhausted from the work week, but would wake refreshed on Saturday morning to the sound of lapping waves and bird song. I paddleboarded in the mornings, read on the deck in the afternoons, and in the evenings I would sit by a crackling fire planning my next renovation project or sketching designs inspired by the natural beauty surrounding me. The lake house was not just a building, it was a living entity that had become an extension of myself. Every corner held meaning, from the window seat, where I watched thunderstorms roll across the lake, to the kitchen island, where I experimented with recipes using fresh produce from the local farmer's market. This was the home I had promised myself, the manifestation of my most cherished dream. Little did I know that the sanctuary I had created with such care and love would become the center of a family betrayal that would shake the very foundations of my relationships and force me to redefine the meaning of family loyalty and self-respect. The first signs that something was amiss appeared subtly like ripples on a calm lake surface. It was early spring, and I was eagerly anticipating the upcoming season at my lake house. I had recently completed a new landscaping project, adding native plants and a stone pathway leading down to the dock. Excited to show off these improvements, I called my parents to invite them for a weekend visit. "Oh, honey, we are just so busy right now," my mother said, her voice carrying an unusual note of hesitation. "Maybe later in the summer." I thought nothing of it at first. My parents had active social lives and were involved in various community organizations. But when I mentioned the lake house again a week later, my father quickly changed the subject, asking about a work project I had briefly mentioned months ago. Around this time, Amanda called with exciting news. She was engaged to Jack Thornton, a successful entrepreneur she had been dating for just under 2 years. Jack came from a wealthy family and had recently launched his own tech startup, which was gaining significant traction in the industry. "He gave me a 3-carat diamond," Giselle Amanda squealed over the phone. "We are thinking about a destination wedding at the Bellagio in Las Vegas, or maybe that gorgeous resort in Cabo San Lucas." I was genuinely happy for my sister. Despite our differences and the subtle competition that had always existed between us, I wanted her to find happiness. "That sounds amazing, Amanda. Have you set a date yet?" "We are looking at next spring," she replied. "Mom and Dad are over the moon. They have already started talking to wedding planners." When I visited my parents the following weekend, the dining room table was covered with wedding magazines, sample invitations, and color swatches. My mother was practically vibrating with excitement as she showed me photographs of potential venues. "We want everything to be perfect for Amanda's special day," she gushed. "The Thorntons are such a prominent family, and we want to make sure our side matches their expectations." As I flipped through a brochure for a luxury resort with a 6-figure minimum booking requirement, a sense of unease began to creep up my spine. "This looks expensive," I said cautiously. "I know you and Dad are comfortable, but these kinds of venues must cost a fortune." My father waved his hand dismissively. "Nothing is too good for our little girl's wedding. We have it all figured out." Based on the venues, designers, and services they were considering, I mentally calculated the cost of the wedding they were planning. The total easily approached $150,000, possibly more. My parents had comfortable government pensions and had always lived within their means, but this level of expenditure seemed far beyond their resources. "Are you sure this is financially feasible?" I asked, trying to be delicate. My mother patted my hand condescendingly. "You always were our practical one, Giselle. Do not worry your head about it. We have been saving for Amanda's wedding since she was a little girl." The conversation moved on, but the seed of concern had been planted. Over the next few weeks, that seed grew as I noticed other odd behaviors. My father, usually quick to return phone calls, became increasingly difficult to reach. My mother's social media typically updated daily with mundane activities, and cute animal videos went strangely quiet. One Tuesday afternoon in April, I tried calling the landline at the lake house to check if the cleaning service had come as scheduled. After several rings, a gruff male voice answered. "Hello." Startled, I hesitated before speaking. "Hi, I am trying to reach the Wilson Lake House." "This is the Peterson residence," the man replied, sounding confused. "I am sorry, I must have dialed the wrong number," I said automatically, even though I knew I had not. I hung up, my heart pounding in my chest. With shaking hands, I called Larry Johnson, my nearest neighbor at the lake. Larry and his wife had retired to the lake permanently 5 years ago, and we had developed a friendly relationship. He often kept an eye on my place when I was away. "Hey Larry, it is Giselle. I was just wondering if you have noticed anything unusual at my place lately." There was a long pause before Larry responded. "Giselle, I figured you knew. A young couple moved in about 2 weeks ago. There was a moving truck and everything. I assumed you had sold the place." The room seemed to tilt as Larry's words sank in. "No," I whispered. "I did not sell it." "Well, somebody did," Larry replied. "They seem like nice folks. Said they got a real good deal on the place." After hanging up with Larry, I tried calling my parents repeatedly. My calls went straight to voicemail. I sent texts that showed as delivered but received no response. For 2 agonizing weeks, I could not reach them. They had never gone this long without communicating with me before. Finally, on a rainy Friday evening, as I sat alone in my apartment instead of driving to the lake house as I normally would, my phone rang. It was Amanda. "Giselle," she said, her voice small and hesitant. "I think you should know something. Mom and Dad, they sold your lake house to pay for my wedding." The words hit me like a physical blow. I could not speak, could not breathe. "I just found out yesterday," Amanda continued into my stunned silence. "They made me promise not to tell you until after the wedding, but that did not feel right. Are you there, Giselle?" How I finally managed to ask the single word carrying the weight of confusion, betrayal, and dawning anger. "I do not know the details," Amanda replied, "but I think you should talk to them." As the rain lashed against my apartment windows mirroring the storm building inside me, I made a decision. This conversation would not happen over the phone. I needed to look my parents in the eyes as they explained how they had sold my dream, my sanctuary, my home without my knowledge or consent. The 3-hour drive to my parents' suburban home was a blur of windshield wipers' headlights and a hurricane of emotions. Questions whirled through my mind like debris in a tornado. How could they legally sell my property? Why would they do this to me? What gave them the right to destroy something I had worked so hard to create? By the time I pulled into their driveway, the rain had stopped, but the sky remained heavy, with clouds matching my mood perfectly. Their house, a modest colonial where I had grown up, looked exactly the same as it always had, which seemed wrong somehow. Should not there be some external sign of the betrayal that had occurred within these walls? I did not bother knocking. Using the key I had carried since high school, I let myself in. My parents were sitting in the living room watching a game show. They looked up startled by my sudden appearance. "Giselle," my mother exclaimed, rising quickly from the couch, "we were not expecting you." Clearly, I replied, my voice tight with controlled anger. "You have not been answering my calls for 2 weeks." My father muted the television. "We have been busy with wedding preparations. You know how it is." "Is it true?" I asked, cutting through the pretense. "Did you sell my lake house?" They exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, my father sighed. "Yes, we did," he admitted. "But we were going to tell you after Amanda's wedding. We did not want to upset you during this special time for our family." "Special time," I repeated incredulously. "You sold MY house, MY property without my knowledge or permission, and you were concerned about upsetting ME." My mother stepped forward, her hands fluttering nervously. "Darling, we knew you would be disappointed, but it was for Amanda's wedding. You know how important this is for her future. The Thorntons are an influential family, and we wanted everything to be perfect." "How did you even do it?" I demanded. "How could you possibly sell property that does not belong to you?" My father cleared his throat. "Remember that power of attorney you signed before your trip to Japan last year, in case anything happened with your property while you were overseas?" The realization hit me like a truck. 2 years ago, I had traveled to Japan for a 3-week architectural conference and study tour. Before leaving, my parents had suggested I sign a power of attorney, just in case anything happened with my properties while I was unreachable. It had seemed reasonable at the time, a precautionary measure I expected never to be needed. "You used that document to sell my lake house," I whispered, horrified. "That was for emergencies, not for you to steal from me." "We did not steal from you," my father protested, his voice rising defensively. "It was just a vacation house, Giselle. You have your apartment in the city. It is not like we left you homeless." "Just a vacation house," I echoed, my voice breaking. That house represented 8 years of saving, months of renovation work, thousands of hours of my life. My mother shook her head, her expression a mixture of exasperation and condescension. "You are being dramatic. It was just a building. Amanda's future is at stake here. This wedding will cement her relationship with the Thornton family. So my dreams, my hard work, my property, none of that matters compared to Amanda's wedding." "You are already established, Giselle," my father said. "You have a successful career. You can buy another house someday. Amanda has this one chance to make a good match." The casual dismissal of everything I had worked for left me speechless. In their eyes, my achievements meant nothing compared to Amanda's marriage prospects. My property was simply a resource to be tapped for her benefit. How much, I finally asked. How much did you sell it for? Again, that glance between them. $180,000, my father admitted. We needed to sell quickly, and the market was not at its peak. Another blow. They had sold my $220,000 property, which after renovations was worth closer to $300,000 for a mere $180,000. Not only had they stolen my lake house, but they had sold it at a significant loss. Before I could respond, the front door opened and Amanda walked in with her fiancé, Jack. Her face fell when she saw me standing there. "Giselle, I did not know you were coming," she said softly. My parents immediately brightened. "Jack, Amanda. Come in," my mother gushed, clearly relieved by the interruption. Jack, a tall man with a carefully trimmed beard and designer clothes, stepped forward with his hand extended. "Nice to meet you, Giselle. I have heard so much about you." I ignored his hand. "Have you heard how they funded your wedding?" I asked bluntly. Jack looked confused, glancing between me and my parents. "What do you mean?" Amanda stepped closer to him, linking her arm with his. "Mom and Dad are contributing to the wedding fund," she said vaguely. "They sold my lake house," I stated flatly, "without my knowledge or permission. That is where your $150,000 destination wedding money is coming from." Jack's expression shifted from confusion to discomfort, but before he could speak, Amanda laughed nervously. "Well, I guess I should say thanks for the wedding present," she said, attempting to lighten the mood. My parents joined in with uncomfortable laughter as if this would somehow normalize what they had done. I looked at them, my family standing there, laughing about the theft of my beloved home, and something inside me broke. Tears threatened, but I refused to let them fall. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the house, ignoring their calls for me to come back and be reasonable. That night, in a sterile hotel room 30 miles from what should have been my lakeside sanctuary, I finally allowed myself to cry. I cried for the loss of my home, for the betrayal of those I had trusted most, and for the painful realization that my place in my family was worth no more than what they could take from me to benefit my sister. As dawn broke, I made a decision. I would not let this theft go unchallenged. I would not quietly accept this injustice. For perhaps the first time in my life, I would fight back against the family dynamic that had always placed my needs, my dreams, and my very property as secondary to my sister's. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the hotel room curtains I had forgotten to close, but it brought no warmth to the cold emptiness inside me. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my reflection in the dresser mirror across the room. The woman looking back at me had puffy eyes and a hollow expression I barely recognized. This loss was about far more than property. Each memory associated with the lake house flashed through my mind like a slideshow of everything I had lost. The smooth pine floors I had sanded by hand until my shoulders ached. The kitchen window where I had positioned my grandmother's antique teapot to catch the morning sunday. The small den I had converted into a home office with its wall of windows overlooking the water where I had drafted some of my most innovative architectural designs. Beyond the physical structure were the intangible losses. The peace I felt each time I turned down the gravel driveway, leaving the pressures of city life behind. The sense of accomplishment as I gazed at improvements made with my own hands. The sanctuary where I processed both professional challenges and personal disappointments. And perhaps most painful of all, the pride I felt in having achieved this dream through my own hard work and determination. My parents had not just sold a building, they had sold a piece of my soul. I picked up my phone and called the one person I knew would understand without judgment. Sarah and I had been best friends since college, and she had been beside me throughout the lake house journey, from the initial property search to helping me paint the master bedroom. "They did what?" Sarah exclaimed after I explained what had happened. "They sold it," I repeated the words, still feeling unreal even as I said them. "Used an old power of attorney to sell my lake house for my sister's wedding." That is illegal," Sarah sputtered. "Power of attorney cannot be used that way. It is fraud. It is theft. Giselle, you need to talk to a lawyer." A lawyer. The thought had crossed my mind, but something had held me back. Perhaps the lifetime of family conditioning that taught me to accept whatever was done to me for Amanda's benefit. Yes, a lawyer, Sarah insisted. My cousin Thomas is an attorney specializing in property law. I am texting you his number right now. Promise me you will call him today. After hanging up with Sarah, I stared at the contact information on my screen. Taking legal action against my own parents felt extreme, a line I had never imagined crossing. But then, I pictured them laughing with Amanda about my wedding present, so casually dismissing years of my hard work and dedication, and something hardened inside me. I made the call. Thomas Reynolds agreed to meet me that afternoon at his downtown office. A serious man with salt and pepper hair and reading glasses perched on his nose, he listened intently as I explained the situation, occasionally jotting notes on a yellow legal pad. "Let me be clear about what happened," he said when I had finished. "You signed a limited power of attorney for your parents to handle property matters in case of emergency while you were overseas. That trip ended over a year ago, but they kept the document and used it to sell your lake house without your knowledge, using the proceeds to fund your sister's wedding." I nodded, the bare facts sounding even more outrageous when laid out so plainly. "Miss Wilson, what they did was unquestionably illegal," Thomas stated. "A power of attorney is a position of fiduciary responsibility. They violated that responsibility by acting against your interests for personal gain, or, in this case, for your sister's gain. Additionally, that power of attorney was granted for a specific time period and purpose. It was no longer valid after your return from Japan." "So what can I do?" I asked, a glimmer of hope kindling in my chest. "You have several options," Thomas explained. "We can file a civil lawsuit for the full market value of the property, plus damages for the fraudulent use of the power of attorney. We could potentially also pursue criminal charges for fraud, though that would be a separate matter handled by the district attorney if they chose to take the case." Criminal charges. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Could I really be the cause of my own parents facing criminal prosecution? "I need to think about this," I said finally. Of course, Thomas nodded. "But do not wait too long. There are statutes of limitations to consider, and the more time passes, the more complex recovery becomes." As I left the law office, my phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. "Can we talk, please?" I ignored it, not ready for another conversation with any member of my family. Instead, I drove to a small park overlooking Lake Michigan and sat on a bench watching the waves crash against the shore. The lake before me was vast and impersonal, nothing like the intimate cove where my house had stood. Still, there was something soothing about the rhythmic movement of water, the constancy of nature amidst human betrayal. For the first time, I allowed myself to fully experience the rage that had been building since Amanda's phone call. I was angry at my parents for their betrayal, at Amanda for benefiting from my loss, even at myself for trusting them with that power of attorney. The anger burned hot and cleansing, cutting through the fog of confusion and hurt. But beneath the anger lay a deeper, more painful emotion: grief. I was grieving not just for my lost property, but for the family. I had thought I had a family who, despite their flaws and favoritism, I believed would never deliberately harm me. That illusion was shattered now, and I had to face the reality that the people who should have protected me had instead become the source of my deepest wound. How could I ever trust them again? How could family gatherings ever feel normal after this? As dusk settled over the lake, I made my decision. I would not allow this injustice to stand. I would not swallow this hurt to keep the peace, as I had done countless times before. For once, I would stand up for myself, for my rights, for the value of my work and dreams. I texted Thomas, "I want to proceed. What do we need to do first?" His response came quickly. "Come back tomorrow morning. Bring any documentation you have related to the property and the power of attorney. We will start building your case." That night, back in my apartment, surrounded by the architectural drawings and design books that represented my professional life, I felt a strange mixture of dread and determination. The path ahead would be painful and would likely permanently alter my family relationships. But for the first time since this ordeal began, I felt a sense of agency. I was no longer just a victim of my family's actions. I was taking steps to right a wrong. As I sorted through my files, gathering documents for tomorrow's meeting with Thomas, I came across a photograph taken the day I closed on the lake house. I stood on the dock, keys in hand, face alight with joy and pride. That woman had worked tirelessly for her dream. had sacrificed and saved and planned. She deserved justice. I would make sure she got it. The following week was a blur of legal consultations, document gathering, and emotional processing. Thomas Reynolds proved to be not just competent but compassionate, understanding the complex emotions involved in taking legal action against family members. Unfortunately, I see this more often than you might think, he told me during our second meeting. Family financial abuse is surprisingly common, especially when there is a history of favoritism or unequal treatment. We began by obtaining copies of all relevant documents. The original power of attorney property records, the deed transfer, and bank statements showing the transaction. Thomas also helped me calculate the total financial loss, including the below-market sale price, the value of my renovations, and even estimated property appreciation. Based on comparable sales in the area and the improvements you made, the lake house would likely appraise at around $300,000 in today's market, Thomas explained, reviewing a real estate assessment he had commissioned. That means you have lost approximately $120,000 through their actions, not counting emotional damages or legal fees. The next step was the hardest, documenting the chronology of events and my parents' explicit admission that they had sold the property to fund Amanda's wedding. I had to relive every painful moment of discovery and confrontation, forcing myself to recall exact wording and reactions. Did they express any remorse or acknowledgement that what they did was wrong? Thomas asked. I shook my head. No. They acted like it was completely reasonable, like I was overreacting by being upset. They kept saying it was just a vacation house, and that Amanda's wedding was more important. Thomas made a note. That attitude will work against them if this goes to court. It demonstrates a clear lack of understanding about the improper use of fiduciary power. As we built our case, I discovered something that made my blood boil. My parents had not only sold the property without my consent, but had deliberately sought a quick sale at below-market value. The buyers, the Petersons, got an incredible deal, Thomas noted, reviewing the sale documents. The house was never publicly listed. Your parents approached a real estate agent friend who found a buyer privately, specifically looking for someone who could close quickly, with minimal inspection contingencies. The Petersons were not at fault. They had simply taken advantage of an unusually good opportunity. But my parents' willingness to sell my property at a significant discount to expedite their plans added another layer of betrayal. With all the documentation in place, Thomas drafted a formal demand letter. It outlined the legal violations, the financial damages, and our proposed resolution: full compensation for the market value of the property, plus legal fees. Or we would proceed with a civil lawsuit and potentially refer the matter for criminal investigation. This is your last chance to reconsider, Thomas said, sliding the letter across his desk for my review. Once we send this, we are committed to this course of action. Family relationships rarely survive this kind of legal confrontation unchanged. I scanned the formal legal language that detailed my parents' betrayal in cold, factual terms. I understand, I said quietly. But they changed our relationship when they decided my property was theirs to sell. I cannot just let this go. Thomas nodded. I will have this delivered by courier tomorrow. While waiting for my parents' response, I faced another challenge: the reactions of extended family and friends as news of the situation began to spread. My mother's sister called, berating me for causing trouble and breaking your mother's heart. My father's golf buddy sent a text suggesting I was being selfish and should be happy to contribute to my sister's happiness. These reactions, while painful, were not surprising. My family had always operated on the unspoken understanding that Amanda's needs came first. My resistance to this established order was seen as disruptive and selfish, regardless of the circumstances. Fortunately, I also discovered unexpected sources of support. My colleague Michael himself, estranged from family due to financial manipulation, offered not only emotional support, but also connected me with a therapist specializing in family trauma. My neighbor Elena brought dinner and sat with me through an evening of tears and doubt, assuring me that standing up for myself was not just right but necessary. What they did was wrong, Elena said firmly. Family or not, no one has the right to take what is yours without permission. 10 days after sending the demand letter, I received a call from Thomas. Your parents have responded, he said. They are requesting a meeting. What did their letter say? I asked. It was not a formal legal response, Thomas explained. Just a handwritten note saying they want to talk in person as a family, not through lawyers. I sighed, recognizing the strategy. My parents wanted to move this from the legal realm, where they were clearly in the wrong, back to the emotional family dynamic where they had always held the upper hand. Should I meet with them? I asked. Not without legal representation, Thomas advised. I suggest a formal meeting at my office. You are entitled to bring support people as well if you wish. After some consideration, I asked Sarah to accompany me. Having known my family for years, she understood the dynamics at play and would provide both emotional support and an objective perspective. The day before the scheduled meeting, I drove past the lake, deliberately taking a route that would not pass by my former property. I was not ready to see another family enjoying the home I had created. Still, being near the water provided a sense of calm I desperately needed. Sitting on a public beach, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, I rehearsed what I would say tomorrow. For years, I had swallowed my feelings to keep the peace, had accepted the role of responsible, self-sufficient daughter who needed less attention, less support, less consideration than my sister. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, I would speak my truth regardless of the discomfort it caused. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember, this is about justice, not revenge. You deserve to be made whole. See you at 9. I tucked the phone away and took a deep breath of lake air. Sarah was right. This was not about punishing my family, satisfying as that might feel in my darker moments. It was about justice, about standing up for myself, and establishing that I would no longer accept being treated as less worthy of consideration than my sister. As darkness fell over the lake, I made a promise to myself: whatever happened tomorrow, I would not back down. The conference room in Thomas Reynolds' law office was deliberately neutral territory, with its polished table, ergonomic chairs, and tasteful abstract paintings. Yet as soon as my parents walked in, followed by Amanda and surprisingly her fiancé, Jack, the space became charged with tension. My mother made a move as if to hug me, but I stepped back, maintaining professional distance. Thomas gestured for everyone to sit, and I was grateful for Sarah's steady presence beside me. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting, Thomas began formally. We are here to discuss the unauthorized sale of my client's property and to find a resolution that addresses the significant damages incurred. My father cleared his throat. Can we drop the legal talk and just speak as a family, Giselle, honey? This has gotten out of hand. With all due respect, Mr. Wilson, Thomas interjected before I could respond. This became a legal matter when you and Mrs. Wilson fraudulently used an expired power of attorney to sell property that was not yours to sell. My mother's face crumpled. We never meant to hurt you, Giselle. We just needed the money for Amanda's wedding, and we knew you had your career and could buy another house someday. That was not your decision to make, I said, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. That house represented 8 years of saving, countless weekends of renovation work, and was my sanctuary. You had no right to take it from me. But family helps. Family, my father insisted. Your sister is getting married. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event for her. Did you even consider asking me? I countered. Did it cross your mind to say, Giselle, we want Amanda to have a beautiful wedding, but we cannot afford it. Would you be willing to help? The uncomfortable silence that followed told me everything. They had not considered asking because they knew what my answer would be, and because throughout our family history, taking from me for Amanda's benefit had never required permission. Amanda, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. I did not know they were selling your house until after it was done, she said softly. I swear, Giselle, when I found out, I told them it was wrong. Yet you are still planning a $150,000 wedding with the proceeds, I pointed out. She looked down at her hands. We have already put down non-refundable deposits. Which brings us to the matter at hand, Thomas said, steering the conversation back to its purpose. My client is seeking full market value compensation for her property, which has been appraised at $300,000 plus legal fees. My father's face reddened. That is outrageous. We only got $180,000 from the sale. Because you deliberately sought a quick sale at below market value, Thomas countered, sliding the evidence across the table. You also failed to account for the significant improvements my client made to the property, which increased its value substantially. We do not have that kind of money, my mother protested. We used most of the proceeds for wedding deposits, as Amanda said. Then you will need to cancel or scale back the wedding, I stated. Amanda burst into tears. You are ruining everything. This is supposed to be the happiest time of my life, and you are making it all about you. The familiar accusation that standing up for myself was somehow selfish might have worked in the past. But not today. No, Amanda. Mom and Dad ruined things when they stole from me. My house was not theirs to give you as a wedding present. My father turned to Thomas, ignoring me entirely. What if we return the money we got from the sale, the $180,000? That was the actual value of the transaction. That would be insufficient, Thomas replied coolly. The unauthorized and fraudulent nature of the sale entitles my client to the full market value plus damages. The meeting continued in this vein, with my parents alternating between emotional appeals and attempts to minimize their financial responsibility. Throughout it all, I maintained my position, supported by Thomas's legal expertise and Sarah's quiet encouragement. Then, just as it seemed we had reached an impasse, Jack cleared his throat. I would like to say something, he said, straightening his tie nervously. All eyes turned to him. Jack had been so quiet during the meeting that I had almost forgotten he was there. I had no idea the wedding money came from selling Giselle's house without her permission, he began. When Amanda told me what happened, I was uncomfortable with it, but I convinced myself it was a family matter that would be resolved. He turned to Amanda. I love you, and I want to marry you. But I do not want to start our life together with this cloud hanging over us. I do not want our wedding day to be funded by something that was taken without permission from your sister. Amanda stared at him in shock. What are you saying? I am saying, Jack continued, that I think we should pay back the money. All of it. But the deposits, Amanda began. My parents offered to help with the wedding, Jack reminded her. We declined because your parents insisted on paying. But under these circumstances, I think we should accept their offer for a more modest celebration and return the money from the house sale to your sister. A stunned silence fell over the room. Of all the possible outcomes I had imagined for this meeting, this was not one of them. Amanda looked at Jack with a mixture of disbelief and betrayal. You are taking her side. This is not about sides, Jack said firmly. It is about doing what is right. If we build our marriage on something that hurt your sister, how can that bring us happiness? I studied Jack with new respect. Despite his privileged background, he apparently had a moral compass that recognized the wrong that had been done. That would be an acceptable resolution, Thomas said, breaking the silence. Full restitution of $300,000 to my client, representing the true market value of the property. But we only received $180,000, my father protested again. Then you will need to make up the difference, Thomas replied implacably. My mother turned to Amanda with tears streaming down her face. We were only trying to give you the wedding of your dreams. I know, Mom, Amanda said, her own eyes welling up. But Jack is right. We cannot start our marriage this way. She turned to me. I am sorry, Giselle. I should have said something sooner. My father, seeing the united front before him, finally slumped in defeat. Fine. We will find a way to return the money. But it will take time to come up with the full amount. We can discuss a payment plan, Thomas conceded, but we will need a legally binding agreement with consequences for non-compliance. As Thomas outlined the terms of a potential settlement, I watched my family's faces. My mother looked devastated, my father angry, and defeated Amanda torn between resentment and guilt. Only Jack seemed at peace with the decision, his hand supportively covering Amanda's. For the first time since discovering what they had done, I felt a measure of control returning. This would not bring back my beloved lake house that was gone forever, but it would provide the means to eventually find a new sanctuary, and more importantly, it established that I would no longer silently accept being the family member whose needs could be sacrificed for Amanda's benefit. As the meeting concluded with an agreement to have formal settlement documents drawn up, Jack approached me. I am truly sorry about what happened, he said quietly. I want you to know that I value family relationships, all family relationships. I hope that someday we can move past this. His sincerity surprised me. Thank you for speaking up today, I replied. It means a lot. Outside the office, as Sarah and I walked to our cars, she gave me a hug. You did it. You stood your ground. It does not feel like a victory, I admitted. Just necessary. "Those are often the same thing," she said wisely. "What will you do with the settlement money when it comes?" I looked up at the clear blue sky, feeling lighter than I had in weeks, despite the emotional exhaustion. I am not sure yet. But whatever it is, it will be my decision, and that makes all the difference. 3 months after that pivotal meeting in Thomas Reynolds' office, I received the final installment of the settlement payment. My parents had sold some investments and borrowed money from my father's brother to make up the difference between the sale price and the full market value we had demanded. The settlement had been structured as a legally binding repayment plan, with the last check representing their commitment fulfilled. I deposited the check without any particular sense of triumph. Money could not restore the emotional damage or replace the specific home I had loved, but it did represent something significant: accountability. For perhaps the first time in our family history, my parents had been forced to face consequences for prioritizing Amanda's desires over my basic rights. During those 3 months, family dynamics shifted dramatically. Amanda and Jack had indeed scaled back their wedding plans, opting for an elegant but much more modest ceremony at a local botanical garden. The event, which took place 6 weeks after our legal meeting, was beautiful in its simplicity. I attended, arriving just before the ceremony and sitting quietly in the back row. Some extended family members gave me cold looks or whispered behind their hands, clearly viewing me as the villain who had ruined Amanda's dream wedding. Others, who had perhaps always felt uncomfortable with the family's favoritism but never spoken up, made a point of greeting me warmly. Amanda, radiant in a simple white gown that was a far cry from the designer creation she had originally planned, caught my eye as she processed down the aisle. The small nod she gave me contained a complexity of emotions I could not fully decipher, but at least part of it seemed to be acknowledgement, perhaps even respect. After the ceremony, as guests mingled during the cocktail hour, Jack sought me out. "Thank you for coming," he said sincerely. "It means a lot to me, and I think to Amanda too, though she might not say it." "It was a beautiful ceremony," I replied, and meant it. The gardens had provided a stunning natural backdrop that no luxury resort could have matched. "I wanted to let you know," Jack continued, lowering his voice, "that I have talked with Amanda a lot about family dynamics and expectations, about treating people fairly. I hope, things will be different going forward." His words gave me a cautious sense of hope. Jack, with his outsider's perspective, seemed to recognize the unhealthy patterns that had defined our family for decades. His influence might help break those patterns for the future. My relationship with my parents remained strained and formal. Our communication was limited to occasional text messages and necessary family information. They had not apologized in any meaningful way, still maintaining that they had acted out of love for Amanda, even as they acknowledged the legal wrongness of their actions. I was in no rush to repair this relationship. Some breaches of trust require more than time. They require fundamental change and recognition that may never come. I was learning to accept this possibility without letting it consume me. With the settlement money secured, I began looking for a new lake property. Not at Lake Geneva, those memories were too painful to revisit, but at a smaller, less developed lake about 40 miles further north. After weeks of searching, I found a modest cabin on a wooded lot with 200 feet of shoreline. At $190,000, it was less grand than my previous home, but had something equally valuable potential. The structure was sound but dated, offering the perfect canvas for my architectural skills and hands-on renovation experience. The location was more secluded, the lake smaller and quieter. It felt like a fresh start. The day I closed on the property, I invited Sarah and a few close friends to see it. We stood on the slightly weathered dock drinking champagne from plastic cups as the setting sun turned the lake to liquid gold. To new beginnings, Sarah toasted, and everyone clinked cups. Looking around at these people who had supported me through the darkest months of betrayal and legal battles, I felt a profound gratitude. They had shown me what true family could be: people who respected boundaries, celebrated successes, and offered support without keeping score or playing favorites. My healing journey extended beyond property acquisition. In the aftermath of the betrayal, I had joined a support group for adults dealing with family estrangement. The stories shared there helped me understand that my experience, while painful, was not unique. Many others had faced similar betrayals by those who should have protected them. Through this group and individual therapy, I began to process not just the recent betrayal, but the lifetime of subtle messages that had taught me to view my needs as less important than my sister's. I learned to recognize the patterns of enablement and favoritism that had shaped our family dynamic, and most importantly, to understand that I had not caused or deserved this treatment. I also channeled my experience into helping others. Using my architectural skills, I volunteered with a nonprofit organization that helped seniors protect their homes from predatory practices. Many elderly homeowners were vulnerable to similar abuses of trust, often by family members using powers of attorney or other legal documents inappropriately. My professional expertise combined with my personal experience made me an effective advocate. 1 year after the discovery of my parents' betrayal, I received an unexpected text from my mother. "Your father and I would like to see your new lake house, if that would be all right." After considerable thought and consultation with my therapist, I agreed to a brief visit. They arrived on a crisp autumn Saturday, visibly uncomfortable as they stood on the porch of my new home. The visit was awkward but civil. They complimented the renovations I had already completed and asked appropriate questions about my plans for the property. We carefully avoided any mention of the previous lake house or the legal battle, focusing instead on neutral topics like the changing leaves and local restaurants. As they prepared to leave, my father hesitated at the door. "Giselle," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "what we did was wrong. Not just legally wrong. Wrong to you as our daughter. I am sorry it took a lawsuit for us to see that." My mother nodded, tears in her eyes. "We have been doing a lot of thinking this past year about how we have treated you compared to Amanda. We did not see it then, but we do now, and we are truly sorry." Their apology, while appreciated, could not instantly heal the damage done. Trust once shattered does not reassemble without scars. But it was a beginning, a small step toward a potentially healthier relationship. "Thank you for saying that," I replied simply. "It means a lot to hear." As I watched them drive away, I felt neither triumph nor bitterness, but a quiet sense of peace. I had stood up for myself, had refused to accept betrayal as my due, and in doing so had not only secured justice but had forced a reckoning that might in time lead to genuine change. The new lake house was smaller than my first, the furnishings more modest, the renovations still in progress. But it was truly mine in a way that went beyond legal ownership. It represented not just my financial investment, but my emotional growth, my newfound strength, my refusal to be diminished by others' actions. Sitting on my new dock that evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, I reflected on the painful but necessary lessons of the past year. I had learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is not blind forgiveness, but establishing boundaries that demand respect. I had discovered that family is defined not by blood, but by mutual care and consideration. And perhaps most importantly, I had found that standing up for oneself while painful is essential to building a life of authenticity and self-respect. The water lapped gently against the shore, a soothing rhythm that spoke of continuity and peace. This new chapter of my life would be written on my terms, with people who valued me not for what I could give them, but for who I was. Sometimes the greatest act of love is not blind forgiveness, but teaching others how to truly respect you. My new lake house is not just a home, it is a monument to my self-respect and the boundaries I finally learned to protect. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to stand up to family members who took advantage of you? Let me know in the comments below. And do not forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if my story resonated with you. Thank you for listening, and remember, your dreams and boundaries matter, and you deserve people in your life who understand that.